Hi, welcome back to session 3, learning how to challenge our thinking through using disputing questions. First, I'm going to take an automatic thought from our prior exercises and sessions, which is I'm going to embarrass myself. And that's the one I've chosen because we rated that at a 95%, which means it's the most believable. Now I'm going to introduce to you what disputing questions are. And as you can see here, we have a list that we used with permission from the Treatments at Work series, Managing Social Anxiety, the Workbook Edition, 3rd edition. I'm not going to go through all the questions with you one by one, and here's why. I don't think that's the most effective way to learn how to use these questions. I think seeing them in action is going to be much more effective. So I'll use one example here with this automatic thought of I'm going to embarrass myself. And I'll also use 3 more examples after I finish session 4. All of the 4 automatic thoughts that we came up with are very common automatic thoughts within social anxiety. So I think we have a good mix of what to work with. How this works is you start with an automatic thought, which we have picked out. And essentially what you do is you get into a kind of a conversation with yourself, if you will, of a point, counterpoint, point, counterpoint. And you go into it with knowing that the end goal is I want something that's going to be more helpful, but yet also has some believability to me. Okay? So what we do is first we state the automatic thought that we see right here. I'm going to embarrass myself. And then we pose a question. And I usually type out coping self as a means of, hey, this is the part of me that's looking and striving towards the goal of more helpful, more believable. So I picked the question, do I know for certain that I'm going to embarrass myself? And then underneath that, automatic thought is, well, no, I don't, but it could happen. So with a coping self, do I know for certain I'm going to embarrass myself? And essentially what this is you're going to kind of pretend it's your anxious self, so the part of you that gets anxious, and answer it from that perspective of, well, no, I don't know that for sure I'm going to embarrass myself, but it still could happen, which is true and it's an important part. Now here's another tip in that when we answer, we have to answer with court of law evidence, okay? So it can't just be, I'm going to, am I going to embarrass myself? How do I know for certain? Well, I just know because it feels that way. That's not going to work. So you have to also answer it truthfully, but with court of law evidence. Okay? So then we go back to, I'm going to ask a question to what the anxious self answer was. And the question I picked is, what's the likelihood that I will embarrass myself? And so I go back and look at maybe the anxious part of me says, well, it's a low probability event. Yeah, it still could happen. We're acknowledging that. But in all the times I've gone to stores, how many times have I actually embarrassed myself? And also other people have actually noticed that. So it's probably a low probability event. I've probably gone thousands of times. Maybe a handful of times I might have embarrassed myself. If I'm really clumsy, maybe just a handful more. I don't know. So it's a low probability event, but I'm still really worried about that happening, and I just don't want it to happen. True. All true. I don't know anyone that wants to get embarrassed in public. So we go back to, okay, what's another way to maybe challenge this, idea or thought? So I selected, why is this, facing this situation, what is important about actually doing it, regardless of how you feel? And also, how is facing that situation consistent with my goals and values? And the anxious self part of me says, well, I want to be more independent and be out in the public. So in doing that, I might have to risk being embarrassed, even if it's a low probability, but I would gain more independence and prove to myself that I usually don't embarrass myself when I'm out in public. And the more that I do this, the more independence that I can gain. So that's just a short snippet of how you could go through sort of step by step of point counterpoint, going back and forth with yourself of how do I challenge my thinking and get it to something that's more helpful yet believable. Now, our work isn't quite done yet. So we have session 4 where we'll talk about putting all of this together and coming up with a rational response, which we then can use to help get us into these situations.